Coach Mike here from King's Camps and Fitness. Today, we're going to take you through a step-by-step walkthrough on preparing your own meals. Here we have a selection of proteins that we're going to be using. In this case, we've chose to use the free-range chicken, some steak, and some organically grass-fed beef. Those are just the choices that I'm choosing to make. You can do anything you want: salmon, seafood, shrimp are all good options, lamb, whatever you want to use for your protein. These just happen to be the proteins that I've chosen to use for my meals. I'll show you how those are prepared in a sec. As far as the grains are concerned, you can pretty much choose anything that you want that's within your diet guidelines. I've chosen some more of the ancient grains here, some Italian grains and rice. Quinoa, the quick cook, is really nice because it cooks in a quick amount of time, so you don't have to wait quite a long time. The wild rice has a tendency to take a long time, but has a lot of flavor to it, and there's a lot of different varieties you can get, including organic and so forth. And the farro is an Italian grain. It's a great fun grain, has a lot of texture to it when eating it, so if you're looking for something to break up the norm, this is a great grain to go with. Again, anything that you want, and we'll show you the way to cook that here in a minute. And veggies are quite easy. In this case, we're just going to use some frozen vegetables. Out of the organics section, I'm happy to use broccoli and green beans. You can use whatever really you want to use. You can use local fresh. The frozen stuff is really quick to cook. Get prepped into your meal plan and go. You can also store it for longer periods of time, so you can buy it a couple days in advance and not have to worry about food going bad before you're getting an opportunity to cook it for your week. It's just a nice, happy, and easy solution for this. These are just some of the spices that we happen to use on the various different foods that we're cooking. These are locally sourced spices. They're low in sodium to no sodium, which you really want to have in your meals. There's enough sodium sources out there that we don't need to be adding them to our food. But these are a great way to season both our vegetables and or our proteins. And again, you can get them wherever you want. Penzeys is another local and national store brand that you can get really great spices at if you have one near you. A lot of them are built into packages such as these that have multiple spices versus just one spice, so they really help boost the flavor of your food and make it a lot more enjoyable for you to eat. I do recommend getting your grains started first. They usually tend to take the longest time, followed by your meats and then your vegetables, which should take a shorter period of time. Do keep in mind with vegetables that the extra cooking time or reheating time that you give them when you eat your meals is going to add to the extra cooking time. So you always want to pull them off a little earlier than you would, say, if they're going straight to plate. That being said, we're going to be starting here with our grains. We're doing a long grain rice. This is a 45-minute cooking time. So you could be starting this right from the beginning and have it finish just when everything else is wrapping up. So if you started this at the end of your cook cycle, you could be adding an additional 45 minutes of waiting time that you wouldn't want to have to do. We're using a rice cooker here to go ahead and cook our rice. We choose this just because it's an easy set aside and forget kind of thing. We don't have to worry about any heat on the stove, anything burning due to overheat. The rice cooker is just a nice, simple, easy way to do it. Do watch your water on using a rice cooker. Sometimes additional water is needed. That being said, we're just going to go ahead and add our rice following the manufacturer's instructions. Do note, if you want to add a little extra flavor to this, you can do things like add some olive oil to this, or even some butter if that's in your diet guidelines, but those will add a little extra flavor. You can also season all these ingredients later, and this will make a great complement to your carbs. So with regard to flavoring your proteins or your meats, the easiest way to do this is to go ahead and coat your meat lightly with a little bit of organic olive oil. It makes it stick and helps with the grilling of the meats. So what we're going to do is we're going to add about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit less, of some olive oil to our meats here. We're going to do this in a bowl so that we can go ahead and utilize as much of the oil as we can without having to coat it on a plate or brush it on or anything like that. And then we're going to take whatever seasoning it is, we're going to put about a tablespoon of that also across the meats. What might look like a lot really is going to go ahead and be not very much. You can go ahead and season to taste. Remember, a lot of the seasoning will be left on the grill. And the meat can be quite thick, so based on the meats that you're using, make sure you season appropriately for your taste. Since we're using things with very little salt and it's really just a seasoning, we really want to go ahead and make sure our food's as flavorful as possible with the best health benefits that we can. So at this point, we'll just go ahead and smudge all the seasonings around and go ahead and make sure that our meat is fully cooked, and then we'll go ahead and add this to a warm grill and cook it on up. The options that we chose for our proteins was some organically grass-fed ground beef. It's not always thought of doing ground beef just by itself, but it is a great treat to have with your meal plans. What we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and cook this up using a non-stick frying pan. We're going to go ahead and no oil or grease if you're using non-stick. You can if you need to, but not necessary. We're going to go ahead and grind this up until that it's just pink, not fully cooked, and at that point we're going to go ahead and add some of our spices. We'll go ahead and come back to that as soon as this meat gets browned out. Grills come up to temperature here. We're using an indoor grill just to keep things easy depending on where you are in the country. It may be cold outside, or you might not have an outside barbecue. We're using an indoor grill just to keep things simple. So now everything's up to heat. We're just go ahead and use some tongs and go ahead and gently apply our chicken to the centermost point of the grill, leaving some space for them to cook. And we're going to go ahead and make sure to get those nice and cooked, checking in with them on a regular basis. And then to make things simple with our cooking, we're going to try to use kind of a one-pot solution. We're going to go ahead and take our existing pot, and we're going to go ahead and return this to the sink and wash it out here, and we're going to use this for any other meats that we happen to be using. This way we're using one pot, we're cleaning as we go, making things simple without having to leave an entire mess behind us once we're done with this process. Ground beef is lightly browned with a little bit of pink in it. We're going to continue to cook a little bit more. We're going with a little bit of a Mexican theme, so we're going to be choosing some Mexican spices that are kind of pre-prepped. We're going to add a tablespoon or more depending on what your flavor palette is, again. And we're going to go ahead and cook that down by infusing the meat with those spices by adding a little bit of water to the meat. This allows the meat to finish off its cooking process, but it also allows those spices to get flavorful and get cooked into the meat. So we're going to go and stir that around, and once we get done with that, once all the water's evaporated, we'll have our Mexican style beef for our meal. We've gone ahead and used the same bowl for our steak selection. We're going to go ahead and put that down here on the grill. We've used the same bowl to go ahead and season it. We're just taking this meat sitting on the grill right along with the chicken, keeping them separated based on your desires, but we're going to go ahead and lay these guys out. They're all seasoned to go. And if you notice, at this point, we have applied our focus to our proteins. Our vegetables haven't started yet. We're 100% on our meats, and we're almost done with them. So we have our chicken that's already done and grilling. It's almost halfway done at this point. We've got our steak, which is just now starting, and we've got our ground beef, which is finishing up its prep cook. So this probably has about 5 more minutes. We probably have about 8 minutes here, and we probably have about 5 minutes left here. We're going to go ahead and flip these. All of these meats are cooking as we are here. At the same time, we have our long grain rice cooking. We have one bowl in the sink that we use to go ahead and season all of this. We can take our time now to go ahead and wash that and make sure our kitchen's clean. And we're going to be done with our proteins. Now that these are cooking, we'll go ahead and start moving on to the extra grains that we want to be using from there. Gotten everything cleaned up. Our meats are just finishing their cooking. We're going to use this extra time to get a couple things prepared. First, because we're going to be monitoring our portion sizes, we're going to be using a nice scale. I don't recommend placing the food exactly on the scale, but rather using a bowl. If you get a scale, I recommend getting a scale that you can go ahead and set the 0 point. So for example, if I turn this scale on now, it will come to 0. If I place the bowl on it, I'm going to have to do some math on that in order to do that. If I turn it off and I turn it off and hit set, it will now set it at 0 with the bowl on there. So when I add meats or vegetables to this bowl and I say want to measure a couple ounces, then I don't have to do any math by removing the weight of the actual bowl, so it's another nice thing. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and then we're going to have our cutting board and our cutting knives that we need to go ahead and cut up our meats. Remember, it's always nice when you have a meal that's prepped to go ahead and have it in chunk form, so cutting it up so that we can do bites, making it easy for us to go ahead and eat pretty much anywhere in the car, on the plane, at work, wherever. So this is a great way to get things set up while we're waiting. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get all of our containers ready to go. These are made by Fit Pack. These are a great option for making your food. Some come divided, some don't. But this is a great way for you to go ahead and put all your food into portion controls, so you'll have your meats and your vegetables and your grains. It's a great way to go ahead and do that. So these are all getting prepped and ready. As the meat's ready to come off, we'll go ahead and chop it up and then go ahead and insert it into our trays. Okay, so my steak has been the first thing that's come off. I've cooked it to my desired wellness. This is actually a little more than I would have liked to have it done, just because again you're going to have that extra cooking time anytime you warm it up, so it's going to cook a little bit more. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and cut it up into pieces that we can go ahead and bite easily. We're going to go ahead and add this to our scale. In this particular case, I'm looking for 6 ounces of proteins. Again, it's up to you and your nutritional needs to go ahead and decide what you need. And so I'm just going to keep adding until I get up here until 6. Until I get to 6, and then once I get to 6, I'll go ahead and add this into my prepared plastic containers for my meal prep. Okay, so our meats are all done. We've got them all cut up and prepped and ready to go. They're all measured out. We have 6 ounces of ground beef that's got a Mexican spice added to it. We've got our 6 ounces of chicken in each of our containers that have kind of an herb and light pepper sauce. And then we've got a nice beef rub that's in the steak that we have here. And those are all set to go. One of the things that people always ask is, well, I didn't measure exactly. I have some extra meat. And you should account for this, because as you're cooking all this, you should be using this as the perfect time to go ahead and prep your meal for the day. So rather than taking away from what you're prepping for the week, make sure to go ahead and use those extra pieces, those extra couple ounces, to go ahead and give yourself your meal for the day. So, for example, I didn't have any extra chicken today, but I did have some extra steak and some extra ground beef. So if you look, this is probably about my 6 ounce portion, and I can measure that out because I have my scale out. But this is going to be my lunch for the day, and these are the scraps. So I'm not taking away from the meals that I'm prepping for the week by going ahead and having my lunch for the day. So those extra trimmings are great. I do recommend that whatever size packages of meat that you get extra. So if you're going for 6 ounce servings and you get 12 ounces of meat, that meat will cook down to less than 2 6-ounce servings. So get something like 14 or 16 ounces of meat. When you cook it down, you'll get 2-ounce servings plus a little scrap for your lunch. Now we're going to be moving on to putting our grains. They should be finishing up cooking now, and we'll go ahead and add those to our containers and move on to our vegetables. So now we've moved on to our vegetables. All of our meat is prepared and all of our grains are prepared. We're just using a double steamer. We've got water boiling along with our steamer. We're using our frozen vegetables, and part of the reason why I like using these, one, because you can get organic. You don't have to chop anything. So for example, with green beans, you don't have to chop the ends off of them, and this is how easy it is to cook the vegetables. Toss them in, throw a cover over the top, and in 5 minutes, you're done. Make sure that you steam just ahead of where you normally cook your vegetables, because you're going to get a little extra cooking time when you cook them off to warm up your meals. So at this point, we've gone ahead and started cooking some of our vegetables, and we've gone ahead and placed our food into our plastic containers ready to go. So I do always recommend making sure that you make combinations that you feel are enjoyable. So, you know, does broccoli go with steak, and does long grain rice go with steak? Also, in this case, we've gone ahead and used a portion sizing of 6 ounces of protein and 4 ounces of grains and vegetables. And that proportion may be different for you and the nutritional guidelines that you've been given. It also might be different based on the types of grains you have and the carb loading or protein content that you're looking to get from each of your meals. So our green beans are cooking at this point. We'll go ahead and add them, and as soon as we're done, we'll go ahead and put our lids onto our packaging. And then we'll go ahead and refrigerate these after they've had a chance to cool off so we don't add any extra condensation, and then we'll go ahead and have them packed ready to go. So in this case, depending on the number of days that you're looking to prep meals for, we can either have 3.5 days. So I have my lunch cooking right now, and I might have my dinner, and then I'll have 3 days lunch and dinner each of those days, or you can have one lunch for 6 total days, depending on how you do this. Don't prep too far in advance because you want to make sure that your food doesn't spoil. So then, now that all of our meals are prepped and ready to go, here are the remnants of what I've cooked tonight. And I have a little bit of extra stuff, so I'll go ahead and watch my portion sizes, but these are just the remnants of everything that I cooked, which will make a great lunch for me today. And I have my food prepped for this evening, so I'm all set to go. Hope you enjoyed this segment of how to food prep for yourself. I hope you find it easy. Please look for the comments down below this article for links to things like Fit Packer, which are the plastic containers, scales, and other items such as that to go ahead and get you started. This will really go ahead and kickstart your weight loss or your weight management and or your athletic performance by going ahead and prepping your meals and not setting yourself up to go ahead and snack inappropriately or go ahead and grab large meals outside of the home.